the talk, all the handicapping is done.
They're all in line. We're ready for the start. They're off in the Kentucky Derby.
Hey everyone, I'm Joy Taylor. Welcome to the ABR Derby Preview Live Show. It's the Kentucky Derby this weekend. America's Best Racing is getting ready to set you up for how to bet on the race this weekend. It's going to be very exciting, and we have some awesome guests. This is the 146th running of the Kentucky Derby, which is obviously tomorrow. Coverage starting at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on NBC. The race is around 7. Normally, the race is scheduled for the first Saturday in May, but like many other major events this year, it's had to be rescheduled for the first weekend in September. The plan was to originally have fans there. Just announced a few weeks ago there will not be fans at this race. But good news is for fans and for bettors is that you can still watch and easily bet the race from home. So America's Best Racing has a handy guide on how to bet from home, how to bet the Kentucky Derby from home. So you can check that out on americasbestracing.net under the Triple Crown tab. Also, all the links are available on my social media as well. Super easy to find at Joy Taylor Talks, but go to americasbestracing.net right now and check that out. But let's talk about who you want to bet in the Kentucky Derby. And for that, I want to welcome our guests, some of the best horse racing handicappers and bettors in the country. So let's start with Gabby Gaudet. She is a handicapper and TV analyst at TVG, which is the horse racing's TV network. She was formerly a racing analyst for major racetracks in New York and Maryland, and she has covered her share of Triple Crown races. So welcome, Gabby. So good to have you.
Thank you so much, Joy. Happy to be here.
We also have Matt Bernier, host of the Matt Bernier Show. Matt worked at the Daily Racing from after rising to racing celebrity status on the TV show Horse Players. Welcome, Matt.
Joy, happy to be here. Happy Oaks, happy Derby.
And finally, we have Chris the Bear Fallica, best known from ESPN's College Game Day. Chris is a hardcore horse bettor who has qualified multiple times for the National Horse Players Championship. You've also heard him on Stanford Steve and the Bear, the podcast, and you've seen him on ESPN's Daily Wager. Welcome, Chris.
I'm happy to be here. It's a little weird doing this in the first Saturday in September, but it's better late than never, and happy to be a part of this and to chat with everybody here.
It is, but as we were mentioning before we got on, there's beautiful weather this weekend, which there normally isn't for the Derby. So let's get started with something simple. What is your number one rule for betting on the Derby? Let's start with you, Gabby.
Don't overthink it. It's just another horse race. You can still make money. Don't overthink it. Trust your opinion, trust your gut, and don't always listen to your friends. I have been dissuaded from my opinion so many times, and it has cost me at the end of the day. So do your research, however you prepare to bet the race, and just go with your gut.
That's great advice. Because if you don't go with your gut and you end up losing, then you blame other people, and then you're mad at them for the whole weekend. Chris, what's your number one rule?
Fade the public. Fade the trendy horse that's getting overbet. The human, like when people bet Patch a few years ago because he had one eye and it was a great story, and he got bet down to ridiculous odds. There is so much money. Look, the Derby is a great event, but it also, for gamblers, it attracts a lot of dead money. It attracts a lot of people who are betting on their, like I said, the best story or their favorite name or their favorite number. So I'm really curious to see when the odds come out. I think South Bend is going to be that horse this year, because I think you're going to get every Notre Dame fan in the world betting on South Bend, thinking that horse has a chance. So he's stuck 50 to 1 on the morning line. I don't think he's going to be that way. So I like gathering a lot of information, and whoever like the trendy chic horses, I like to steer clear of that.
Okay. And well, I mean, yeah, if you go to Notre Dame, can't you put a little bit on them? I know. Matt, what is your number one rule?
Typically, I would say shop around for a price. This is going to be the only time that these horses take on this many competitors in the afternoon, but you get a rare instance like this, and perhaps it's because of the unique circumstances this year with the race being run the first Saturday in September. Typically, I would say try to fade the favorite, but I have to be honest, and we'll dive into it a little bit more here. I have a really difficult time going against Tiz the Law, and depending on what his off odds end up being, he may actually offer a little bit of value close to even money.
So let's talk about Tiz the Law. It sounds like he's the surest bet to win the Derby as any horse in a long time. So is that the case, or is he beatable, Matt?
To me, he just checks all the boxes. He is everything you could possibly want or ask for from a racehorse. He has the mind, he has the athleticism, he has the tactical ability. And for me, most importantly, for a race like the Kentucky Derby, you're going to notice that many of these horses have never gone 1.25 miles, 10 furlongs. Not only has Tiz the Law done that, he's run his fastest race at the 10 furlong distance, and it didn't look like he had taken a deep breath winning the Travers a few weeks ago. So I have no interest whatsoever in trying to beat him on top. I think he's far and away the most likely winner, and I'm going to go a step farther and say I think he's the most likely winner of the Derby we've seen in many, many moons.
Chris, would you agree with that?
I agree that he is a very likely winner, and I think the defection of King Guillermo in there, I think that even sets the race up for him even better, because I obviously he's going to move in a spot now from the outside because of that scratch. But he's been so versatile. He can be right near the lead. He can come from a little bit further back. Can he lose? Yeah, but as Matt was saying, like I just don't see the quality of the field in terms of the depth that we normally have. Usually we'll have a few horses that are around 8, 10, 12, 14 to 1 that have a legitimate chance. But other than Honore P and New York Traffic, like I don't know who the upsetter is. I mean, it would be like a Giacomo Mind That Bird type, I think, upset if indeed he does lose tomorrow.
Gabby?
Well, okay, I think it's worth noting that his only career loss did come at Churchill Downs. And this is a horse who has 7 career starts, and his only loss was at Churchill. Now, it was a completely different scenario. I believe that he's a different horse now. He's much more mature. I think his rider and Manny Franco has gotten to know him a lot better since that particular race. And it was on a sloppy track, and it did not look like he handled the surface that day. It's going to be a perfect surface tomorrow afternoon. The one thing that his trainer has mentioned that could be his undoing is that he's a horse that doesn't like to be fought. He kind of likes to just get underneath of himself and continue running, no restraint, and does not really like to be inside of horses. I think that's the only way that he loses tomorrow. If something happens coming out of the gate, he breaks slowly, somehow he gets buried between horses. That's the only way I see him losing. If he gets a wide trip, I think he's so much better than the other 3-year-olds in this race that he can still pull it off. So you have to maybe consider that. But as you guys were mentioning, it's like he's got athleticism, he has agility, and that kind of leads me to a horse that other people have been talking about, in Honor AP. I see him as the complete opposite. I know a lot of people like him to try to beat Tiz the Law, but Tiz the Law is so athletic, and he moves like a cat. He's so much on his toes, whereas Honor AP kind of takes him a while to get his wheels going. And I don't find that is an attribute that you want in a Kentucky Derby runner.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing with Honor AP. He was probably the 3-year-old that I was most excited about coming into 2020 back in January when we had no idea what was coming. But I agree. I don't think the race is going to set up for him at all. And there was one other thing you talked about, Manny Franco and Tiz the Law. Like I was thinking yesterday, like I wonder how much it's going to be a positive, the fact that there aren't going to be 100,000 fans there. Because look, this is Manny Franco's 3rd Derby, and he's on the Derby favorite. He's been on 2 hopeless long shots. So like the normal nerves and that wall of noise that you're going to hear with my Kentucky home air, like that's not going to be there like it normally would be. So I think the lack of a huge crowd is probably going to be a big help for Manny Franco, and probably relax him even more as well as getting that Belmont win under his belt a couple months ago.
And Gabby, kind of real quick to your point of, I think it's going to be something unforeseen that would need to happen to Tiz the Law for him to not win this race. And from a gambling standpoint or a betting perspective, I don't want to try to predict things that are unpredictable. If the horse stumbles out of the gate, there's no indication or reason for me to believe that that's going to happen. So trying to just sort of pie in the sky, draw at straws and hope that something happens that on paper I have no reason to believe will, that to me just seems like you're just trying to draw up a reason for the horse to lose. I think they just park him out in the clear and say, we think he's the best. Let's just take our chances.
So if you're going to try and play against Tiz the Law, who are some more logical contenders to win the Derby then?
Well, it's an interesting perspective, because typically these races, ever since the Derby qualifying standings have sort of been implemented over the past handful of years, I believe we're going on 8 years now, It's been a race that's been very, very formful, and it's been a race where in order to win, you need to have a little bit of tactical speed, if not outright beyond the front end. So I would assume it's going to be a horse that's going to be relatively close to the pace in the same sort of vicinity as Tis the Law. And Chris had kind of alluded to a horse who sort of fit that mold in King Guillermo. Unfortunately, he's not going to run. I know a lot of people still doubt the sort of distance for a horse like Authentic. But I do wonder, from the outside, I kind of feel like they have one way to go with him. John Velasquez, a Hall of Famer, is going to be riding for Bob Baffert. I can't imagine both of Baffert's horses get into some sort of a prolonged duel. I think they have to try to clear from the outside, and that would be the only one at this point to look at. Honor AP, I suppose he could win, but I don't think he's going to offer any kind of value. Authentic, if for whatever reason they let him just get loose out on the front end and say, you know what, the distance will beat him, he'll come back to us. Maybe he could get brave and you could see some sort of a gate to wire score. But again, that's a very, very unlikely proposition, in my opinion.
Don't you think that Florent Giroux will probably put 1,000 words into the race, though, as well? He's pretty aggressive out of the gate if he senses a soft pace.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I think he's probably sort of tucked in, I don't want to call it the pocket position, but in just behind the speed, simply because I'd be very, very surprised if the instructions from Baffert for his two horses were, well, you're both kind of speed types, go on with it. I think the last thing I should say that he would want is for his two horses to duel one another into submission and then set this thing up on a silver platter for a horse like Tis the Law. But to your point, 1,000 Words is not a horse who is necessarily slow. He's got that sort of early foot that he can be involved early as well.
Gabby, what are your thoughts?
I like two long shots. One is a horse, and when you work in this industry year round, you just wind up going back to the same horse, and they keep losing and they keep losing, and you lose so much money on them that by the time they actually get to the Kentucky Derby, why jump off of them at this point? So the horse that fits that mold for me is Attachment Rate. I have picked and bet this horse for the last 2, if not 3 times, and he has not won yet. So he's probably going to be 35, 40, 50 to 1, something like that. And this is a horse that I just absolutely have to use considering my history with him. Now, I'm probably not going to bet him to win. That would be a little bit crazy. But I do think that he's a horse that you can throw into some exotic wagers, say an exacta or a trifecta or a superfecta. When sports fans and people who follow sports, I feel like they always have a tradition surrounding a major sporting event. And my tradition for the Kentucky Derby is I bet the Kentucky Derby superfecta box. And he is a horse that I will definitely be putting in there.
Yeah, it's funny. I can't remember. It might have been you who turned me on to Attachment Rate back at Gulfstream in January when he was like 50-something to 1 in his second start, and he nearly got there at a huge number. So I've heard Attachment Rate's name as well. Someone else who I mentioned earlier, who I think has a chance, is New York Traffic. This is a horse that just missed versus Authentic in the Haskell. If the race was 70 yards longer, New York Traffic goes by him. Go back to that race earlier this summer at Churchill Downs in the Matt Winn, where he got beat a length by Maxfield. And if Maxfield is in this race, he's probably second choice to Tis the Law. The defection of King Guillermo certainly helps New York Traffic. If the two Bob Baffert pieces don't want to go at each other, then you're looking at New York Traffic maybe stalking either 1,000 Words or Authentic and sitting in a really good spot. And maybe he's just not good enough to hold off Tis the Law or someone from behind. But I get a sense that if Tis the Law were to lose, it's going to be from someone who is in front of him in the stretch. I don't think we talked about his athleticism. Once he levels off and kicks clear, I don't think Honor AP or anybody like that is going to go by Tis the Law. I think it's going to be someone, whether it's an Authentic or someone or a New York Traffic who is in front and just gets brave and game and is fresh enough to be able to hold him up. But I think New York Traffic is a little bit of a forgotten horse and someone who is definitely going to be in all of my exotics.
Yeah, so Gabby, that was a perfect transition for me because I was going to ask you about long shots next. Country House won the Derby last year, and a $2 bet would have won you $132.40. So I like those numbers. But if you're a first-time bettor, Matt, and you want to bet on a long shot, obviously you want to set up kind of a more exotic bet. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, the way that I would be looking at this race and the way that I'm going to approach it tomorrow afternoon is Tiz the Law, simply put, is the most likely winner of the race. So I'm not going to try to beat him, but what I'm going to try to do is key him on top in what's called an exacta, which is you need to pick the runners in first and second exactly. And you can use a number of horses underneath if you so choose. The two horses I was most interested in at bigger prices are Enforceable, the number 3, and the number 12, Sola Volante. And it's not because I think they're the most talented horses in the race. I think I could even make the statement that they're probably not in the top half as far as the most talented horses in the race. But this Derby always ends up being a bit of a war of attrition for some of the horses underneath. And we've seen brilliant horses who can't see out the 1.25 mile distance. That's not going to be the case for either of these runners. They're going to come from farther off of the pace. And I wonder if it turns into sort of a stamina test. And let's say, for whatever reason, Honor AP doesn't stick around. For whatever reason, Authentic and New York Traffic, maybe they find the distance a little bit too difficult. These two horses are going to be running at the end of the race. I have little doubt about that. And they're both going to be north of 30-1. So that's how I'm going to approach this. If you can't try to beat Tiz the Law, or you don't have any interest, like I don't, I want to use these two horses underneath Tiz the Law and an exacta.
Chris, did you agree with that advice?
I do agree, and that's pretty much how I'm going to be approaching the races, making Tiz the Law a key in my exacta and trifecta. I'll put him underneath for a smaller unit play, but my bigger unit play will be Tiz the Law on top of exactas and tries, and I'll use New York Traffic underneath. Matt mentioned Enforceable. I think he's a horse that is a little bit better than what he's shown lately. He's been stuck with some brutally wide trips in his last couple of races, and I think the inside post will help him. And again, he'll be a horse that's going to be kind of picking up the pace and picking up as many horses late, and maybe he can crack into the try at least, or the super. I think Money Moves is a horse who's never faced graded stakes company, but Todd Pletcher has him in the race, and whether he's just there to run a horse in the Derby, who knows? But if you're going to give me Javier Castellano and Todd Pletcher in the Kentucky Derby with a horse that is lightly raced and seems to be on the improve, potentially in his fourth career start at 30-1, I'm going to use him as well. And then I'll use New York Traffic, and then I will use Honor AP as well. And I'll throw attachment rate in there as well. So I think I'll play like a 1x5. I think that is ticket, exacta and try. And then I'll throw out some horses underneath for third, but that'll be the way I go. And if one of those mid-price, long-price horses can somehow upset the apple cart, you're looking at a big ticket.
Now, Gabby, I know your attachment rate is your horse, right, that you're attached to. But if you're going to advise a first-time bettor, maybe you are telling them to do attachment rate, but what are your recommendations for a long type of exotic bet?
My personal experience with attachment rate, I did say a couple minutes ago that I was not going to bet him to win, but I will be sick to my stomach. I will be sick to my stomach. So I'll probably bet him across the board, a pretty modest bet across the board. But I mentioned every single year, and this was a tradition that I had, going back many, many years, by the time I was legally allowed to bet, of course. But I really like to do the superfecta box. So what this is you just have to pick the top 4 horses in any order. So I'll probably throw in a couple of long shots. I, of course, really do. I think that Tiz the Law is the likeliest winner, but I will be using attachment rate. I'll probably use New York Traffic, and I'll definitely use Authentic. I thought Matt made some really good points, and he's another horse that could just get courageous on the front end if that does happen. And I also kind of feel like throwing in Dallas Stewart. He has the 14 winning impression. And one thing about Dallas Stewart is, I think going back to even California Chrome's Kentucky Derby win, he finished second with a horse at 39-1. And Dallas Stewart is just one of those trainers that always finishes in the top 3, top 4 with these massive long shots, pretty much every Derby or Oaks that he runs in. So, history does usually repeat itself. I might use that horse as well.
I think he's had 4 horses hit the board in a Triple Crown race, and I think all 4 of them have been at least 34-1 to echo
there
your
you
point.
go.
Back that up.
Now, how much is the weather and the lack of fans do you guys think is going to actually play a role in the race? Because obviously, all sports are being affected by everything that's going on, but this is a very unique situation. So, Matt, how much do you think that's going to play a role in tomorrow's race?
To be honest, I think it plays a rather important role for one horse in particular. And for those who haven't seen his races prior, the number 18 Authentic, who is the horse that we've kind of chatted about, who projects to be forwardly placed in the race, he's very, very goofy. He's very, very green, and he gets to looking around whenever he hears noises and things of that nature. They've run him with earplugs in to try to prevent any sort of, peripheral noise from kind of distracting him. I think he's actually the beneficiary of this whole thing, where it's going to be a very, very unique circumstance, obviously, with no fans there. But he actually may be the horse who benefits the most, more so than anyone else, simply because there's not going to be nearly as much for him to get distracted by. So I think it's at least something to consider for a horse who is sort of notorious at this point for maybe having a bit of a wandering eye. This might actually be the perfect scenario for a horse like this.
And even for the favorite Tis the Law, I mean, Gabby had brought up earlier about his worst career race came at Churchill Downs, and the fact that that race was in the slop of Churchill Downs, that could be written off as an excuse. And if he will have a fast dry track tomorrow, we'll see if it was indeed just circumstance. Was it the sloppy track? Was it the Churchill surface at all? But the fact that he's going to get a clean track tomorrow, I just think I think is a big factor as well. The fact good weather. No excuses with the bad track for any of these horses tomorrow.
Yeah, it just levels the playing field. I truly do believe. And the one thing about Kentucky Derby Day, you don't really know who is going to react to the crowd or the day adversely. It's something that, at least when I've been covering the Kentucky Derby before in the past, you pay attention to the behavior of these animals on the racetrack. That's not something that I don't think it will adversely, we won't really see that happen this year because of the crowd. So I think that's a good thing. I really do think, I wish spectators were there. I wish we were all living, at a different time right now. But at least from a Kentucky Derby standpoint and the horses, I do think it kind of levels the playing field.
So for a sports bettor who hasn't bet the Derby from home in the past, what do they need to do to get an account and to bet the Derby tomorrow? Chris, we'll start with you.
I would suggest just finding whatever ADW, whether it's Twin Spires, TVG, Naira Bets, and whatever is accessible in your jurisdiction. And especially for a day like tomorrow, whatever one of these sites has the best sign-up bonuses. They're all competing with each other right now to get your business and get you to fire in on the Derby tomorrow. So I'm sure whether it's TVG, they always offer a bunch of great sign-up bonuses. And I would probably, I think they're the national one. I probably would take a look at TVG's first, and then if you're in New York or the Northeast, Naira Bets has some great advantages as well. So those would be the three, and they just sign up and deposit some money and have some fun.
And make sure you do it soon, because obviously you want the money to clear so that you can bet on the race tomorrow, because it's only a day away. Well, thank you guys so much. Again, you can check out all of this information on americasbestracing.net under the Triple Crown tab. You have how to bet the Kentucky Derby from home. There is a Kentucky Derby cheat sheet. So everything that you need to know. And as Chris just said, it's really easy to sign up, but do it soon because the race is tomorrow and you want your money to clear. And use all this great advice that we got on America's Best Racing Derby Preview Live from all of you, and win some money tomorrow. So thank you guys so much for jumping on with me. Matt, Gabby, Chris, best of luck tomorrow on Derby Day, even though it's going to be a little different than normal. But, we're making everything happen right now. Like we all wouldn't have met if it wasn't for this, even if it's digitals. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you to America's Best Racing. Make sure you go follow them all on social media, americasbestracing.net, and enjoy the Derby tomorrow. Thank you.